I think I deserve some sunglasses on today, guys. I posted the last video here a few hours before the Fed meeting. And if there's any doubt, this means bullish as so lucky, always so lucky, so unfair. Jokes aside, I said the fact that the uncertainty is settled around the rate cuts can be bullish for the market in itself, along with the technical signs we saw in the chart. Also, I said we might not need the bear cap anymore, and I'm happy to announce that I found my favorite cap in the boxes. I also mentioned Solana. I said this 2 days ago on Wednesday. On the Sol to USD chart, it's 127. So this could be a near perfect risk reward right now on both the Sol to USD and on the Sol to BTC chart, with short distance to invalidation, with potentially a larger upside than downside distance. But if nothing happens really soon now, and this breaks down, or even worse, this breaks down, this would instead starting to look really bad, with key supports breaking down with Larsson line blue. If that happens, I would be very cautious. Now price is 151, so up about 16% in 2 days from the video. 20% if you were monitoring this support level already and bought at support. Did you see what I did there? I didn't need to predict the future of markets. I just had to identify a good risk versus reward ratio and make a rule that if this happens, then do that. If you have the patience to wait for the right opportunities to present themselves, this isn't that difficult, guys. It really isn't. I'm not saying this to brag. I'm trying to teach methodologies that I've found useful and that you might find useful as well. Remember I said it's so nice to sit here with the birds chirping and everything. Today there's a guy building a wall just over there, seemingly with one hammer and by himself. I will try to filter it out in software. The most common request from all of you right now is for me to cover this project, which I've actually done the whole time in the Friday TA Pro reports. Even if you don't have it, not following this project, there are some useful learnings in this for everyone. A couple of weeks ago on August 23rd and the week before that, I wrote, selling has clearly stopped and it looks like at least someone is buying. If breaks this resistance could get interesting again. Sorry for the bad English. Then on the 23rd, I wrote, now the resistance, as I drew it, looks reclaimed. And that referred to this resistance down here, which clearly had gotten reclaimed. And as you saw, I was analyzing the Bozo to Sol chart. And the support that had gotten reclaimed was down here. August 23rd was here. If we check the USD price on August 23rd, it was about 0.0055. Then on August 30, price had already doubled. Entertained. And then on the 8th of September, I wrote, price has reclaimed previous support on both Bozo to Sol and Bozo to USD charts. And that's the next support and resistance level, which if you look at the current chart was up here. Then you see price had already doubled and made a bullish chart construction. Then if we move forward to the 13th of September, last week, I wrote, seems like that was the correct interpretation and price has now moved further up on both charts. And you see so clearly here, it's not rocket science, guys, support reclaimed. And as frequently happens when support is reclaimed this way, price goes up. So USD price right now 0.02384 divided by 0.0055 as I pointed out back in August. This one is now up 4x in about 1 month. And I just deployed basic chart analysis here, both on this breakdown, the reclaim of support first once and then twice. Technical analysis is such a massively useful tool. And the less analyzed the project is, the easier it is. Of course, with something like Bitcoin, there's BlackRock and Morgan Stanley and all kinds of people sitting analyzing this. And then the narratives and the manipulation and so on gets much more advanced. You have to start thinking in terms of Wyckoff terms, which is like the OG model of professional manipulation deployed by Wall Street for 100 years. And you have to be much more patient. If you're not on Larsson Line Pro already, you unfortunately can't join now. My shop is closed. The only thing I can offer you right now is to download this checklist, which I'll also use as a waitlist later, if you want. But I can show you this list of colors because it's so striking. This is a random list of projects that have come up in discussions. And this view, I think, shows the power of a trend-following approach and capital preservation, instead of hodling altcoins based on religion, because most altcoins, even the good ones, even the interesting ones, frequently turn into massive downtrends. Statistics just aren't on your side if hodling altcoins is your strategy. In Bitcoin, the next events to watch now, the higher high, just like we got a higher low, and from there it is very close to an all-time high breakout. And like I said on Wednesday, that means the possibility of a new uptrend to be back on the menu with Larsson Line Gold, which would be very tasty. As tasty as drinking coffee from your favorite coffee cup with a guy building the wall having taken a lunch break. Let's go inside. My coffee is finished.
And now for something completely different.
I don't think anyone has missed that the narrative around Bitcoin and digital assets has completely changed over the past couple of months. This is Forbes now. BlackRock reveals it's quietly preparing for a 35 trillion Federal Reserve dollar crisis with Bitcoin, predicted to spark a sudden price boom. Shock and awe. China could be about to trigger a 1.4 trillion Bitcoin and crypto price earthquake. These are so direct things even I wouldn't say. Now these narratives are mainstream media, and is there any point to it? US interest payments reach 1 trillion. Interest payments have gone up really fast. The interest on debt has become huge, bigger than the defense budget, which isn't necessarily that bad in itself, but it's also very high compared to everything else. And the even bigger problem here is that the debt is high and it's getting higher because there is a deficit, which means revenue minus costs, and the interest payments are now like half of that deficit. And I think this site was useful. Why is the national debt so high? Three major drivers of our growing national debt: demographics, people are getting older, more senior population, rising healthcare costs, which in the US are comparably high. But in a way, all those are pseudo explanations. If you have a deficit, what is the explanation? The explanation is this: you have a mismatch between your revenue and your spending. You're spending more than you're getting in. And I think there are bigger changes coming here, which could make these problems worse. I'll explain why in a second. Problems which could worsen this deficit, which in turn could cause populist politicians from either party to try to print themselves out of that problem, pushing the problem 4 years into the future, which could make this already huge problem much worse, which is actually the narrative here. So what is the problem I'm talking about? It is this. I mentioned this before, but I want to come back to it. Here are job data plans by month. Here is 2024, and at a glance you will see that these numbers 2024 are very low. In fact, shockingly low. I'm a student of trends in technology and in society, and this could be some of the first observable signs of a trend that I've talked about for some time. Era digitalis. There's a bigger shift in our society happening in front of everyone, but most people fail to see the bigger picture. And over time, society can actually change quite a lot. I think this was a really nice article. It was not far from the first manned flight to humans on the moon. In 1968, Secret Service wasn't protecting presidential candidates. Not sure that has changed, so maybe that wasn't a good example. Interracial romance wasn't for TV. Seatbelts weren't mandatory. A gallon of gas cost 34 cents. Air travel was only something for the very privileged. 911 didn't exist. Lead-based paint was all the rage. There were no heart transplants. Dialing involved clockwise finger rotation. No US president had ever resigned. Cigarette ads on TV. There was no awareness about skin cancer. The internet hadn't even been invented. Computers took up entire rooms. Walmart was a mom-and-pop store. Made in China items were hard to find. Iran was America's ally. No one really cared about the environment. The US Senate had never had a black woman representative. They were hitting children. Radio was the only means of portable music. Minimum wage was higher than today. The hourly minimum wage was $1.60 back in 1968. With inflation, that boils down to about $10.74 per hour, compared to today's current national minimum wage of $7.25. This article is a few years old, still very interesting. It was only then that women were joining the workforce. And that's if we look at the West. If we look at Hong Kong in 1967 versus today, that's a change. Or if you look at some pictures of Bangkok in the 1950s and Singapore in year 2000 versus today, the change is enormous. I guess they made the black and white photo to illustrate that it's old, but still you can pattern match here and see what enormous change there has been only since year 2000. During this time, blue-collar jobs like manufacturing almost disappeared from the West, replaced by white-collar jobs in office buildings. And I'm telling you guys, a lot of those jobs that need a human will get replaced either by low-cost, hard-working people in booming Asia with great education and skills. They were previously held back by the fact that they can't get to the office where everyone is working. Now, work is in the computer anyway. And the second category of worker that will take a lot of current white-collar jobs in the West is obviously AI, which can do more and more jobs. And we're just seeing the beginning of this, and I am certain that all these predictions are underestimates, because we humans just can't wrap our heads around exponential growth, which is a straight line on the log chart. Office and administrative support, legal, architecture and engineering, science, business and financial operations, management, computer and mathematics. Analysts are disagreeing on the exact number, but a lot of them have found that, for example, software developer jobs is in decline. Then can discuss exactly how many. And of course there are software category jobs that are increasing, for example around AI. And the rate of this change is accelerating. For example, I thought to hire a junior software developer around now, but now I'm thinking perhaps that's not a good idea. In 1 year, ChatGPT has gotten radically better, and with better memory that's coming now, perhaps it can replace that person, doing it not only at the thousands of the cost, because I don't care so much about that, but to do it faster and better and with less mistakes. I've thought a lot about this during the summer. The world will actually change, guys. Often it feels like that's an interesting thought, but then we will all go back to normal. But no, it won't be like that. What is normal in the Western world is spiraling out of control. The basis for these numbers will actually change. Companies and work will move around the world, and people with good jobs, living in a big house, driving a good car today, will find themselves unable to earn a living because they have been replaced by a piece of software. Whole industries will disappear. I'm not applauding this. I think in fact that life in, for example, Sweden was in many ways easier 50 or 40, 30 or even 10 years ago than it is today. I'm just observing that it is happening today, and this trend will accelerate fast. Something like digital ownership of digital global money not controlled by anyone seems like a crazy idea that will never take off to most people even today. But so did the computer, air travel, the mobile phone, internet, and that we would begin living our lives increasingly digitally. Work, education, finding partners, our social life, and that we wouldn't read newspaper, watch the news, but instead listen to individuals on X or YouTube instead. That AI could replace programmers and lawyers now in 2024, and that we would use the same iPhones and protocols in rural Thailand or rural Pakistan as in the finest buildings of New York City. Emerging new interfaces to the human body, like amazing VR interfaces, eye tracking and even brain links. I've said this before, but it's such a profound conclusion that I want to repeat it with more emphasis and more consideration. Said best by Jim Carrey.
My father could have been a great comedian, but he didn't believe that that was possible for him. And so he made a conservative choice. Instead, he got a safe job as an accountant. And when I was 12 years old, he was let go from that safe job. And our family had to do whatever we could to survive. I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want. So you might as well take a chance on doing what you love.
The idea that I want to offer to you today is that if you feel that you are wrongly positioned professionally for the change that will come during the next 1, 2, 5, 10 years, then reposition yourself today. Fucking do something, as I wrote the first time. You don't have to do as big change that I'm doing right now, but do something, because change means opportunity. And perhaps never before in human history has there been so much change coming in so short period of time as right now. Just look at ChatGPT 1 or 2 years ago versus today, or how digital assets were discussed 1, 2 years ago versus today. Then it was a bunch of nerds. Now it's main presidential candidates and the head of the biggest asset manager of the world, and the SEC is backtracking and apologizing that they were misunderstood. Or compare how important your digital life was 10, 20 years ago versus today. Or if you were almost anywhere in Asia 20 years ago and go back to the same spot today and just look around you. There's never been so much change. That means that there has never been so much opportunity in the history of mankind as it is right now. And I can 100% guarantee that the vast majority of people will position themselves completely wrong. How do I know that? Because the vast majority of people don't like change. They will resist. Most politicians as well. They will try to regulate it, to stop it. Preserving the past, preserving the incumbency. If you instead do the opposite, embrace the change, lean into the change, elbow yourself in front of the cult of average, I promise you that the views are much better from there. The number one best opportunity that I have identified in this vast space is trying to master technology investment, which to me means crypto and tech stocks, and specifically to trade technology trends, because those trends are massive. Also, it's practically possible to do this. The monetary return on the time I've invested has been fantastic for me. And it's free in time and space. And it's fun, I like it. I've met amazing people. I'm not trying to sell you anything. My shop is closed. I've just thought a lot about this during the summer. So for you, if you haven't already, at least start thinking of what action you should take and when. Thank you, tack. CTO Larsson out.